Okay, we kind of got a lot to go through tonight, so we're going to go ahead and get started, I think. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Remote Jobs Workshop. I'll give my introduction here in a minute, but thanks a lot for being here. Hopefully we'll end a little early, but we'll see. In general, as we go through this, we do kind of have a lot of content, so if you have questions or anything, raise your hand or ask them in the chat. You can also ask them in the Q&A section of Google Meet. That's pretty handy. But somebody here will answer the question, whether it's me or Danny or another staff member. So again, thanks for being here. This is sort of the loose agenda for tonight. So we're going to go through some team introductions, resume refreshers that you may have already heard before, but can't hurt to reiterate. Some stuff on web presence and personal branding, and making yourself sort of branded to be a remote tech worker, actually applying for remote jobs, and how to best succeed at applying for remote jobs, technical interviewing, what remote work is actually like once you start doing it, and then just sort of a wrap up and Q&A. Again, as you have questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand and ask during sort of the stopping points, but you can always ask questions in chat or in the Q&A. We really appreciate it. But yeah, here is sort of the breakdown of the careers team. So I'm David York. I'm one of the technical project managers. We'll get a little bit more into what I do in a minute. My co-host tonight is Danny Martin.
Hey, everybody. You'll get to hear me here in a little bit too.
Shannon Sheehy is the manager of the careers team. So if you're ever not exactly sure who to reach out to, she's a really good person to reach out to. She kind of makes sure all of the events and stuff that we put on actually happen on time and everything gets organized and finished the way it should. Candy Hall is actually a pretty recent addition to our team. So she's the technical career coach for Eastern Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, and Central Kentucky. She effectively will be focusing a lot more on mock interviewing, resume prep, stuff like that, but we'll get a little bit more into that in a minute. Jenny Terry is her counterpart, but in the Louisville region. So I'm sure that you've heard her name around quite a lot if you've been a part of the program for any length of time. And then Allie Rippey is the employer relationship manager. So she is basically responsible for keeping up our positive relations with all the really cool employers that we have and making sure that there are really great jobs for you all to apply to once you get through the program and if you're looking right now. So she is a very good person to get to know. In general, what we do are resume reviews, mock interviews. Those are really the focus of Jenny Terry and Candy Hall. Those are their things. Really useful. If you haven't already been doing that sort of thing with them, you will at some point, or definitely reach out to them. We do a lot of hiring events and just general networking type events. We give general advice and insight on leading a solid, successful job hunt, which is pretty important. In Slack, as well as the Tech Careers newsletter, we connect you to really hot job leads. That's a super important part of what we do. Anytime that you see a job in Slack that has a pinned message or anything like that, we have a connection there. So please reach out to the person that posted that. If you're not sure if we have a connection somewhere, ask. If we don't, fair enough, but we might. You'd be really surprised. If the Tech Careers newsletter does not sound at all familiar to you, it's because you probably don't get it yet. You will get that once you graduate the courses, so no worries if you don't have that just yet. Me and Danny really focus on technical project building, so we really make sure that once you graduate, you continue to build technical projects and continue to flesh out your portfolio and make sure that it's really, really solid so that you can be really competitive in your applications to things. Danny, anything you want to add to that, or does that pretty well have it for us?
Yeah, that's it. We do either personal projects with you, and then we also partner with nonprofits to solve some of their needs. So when you're building the projects, you do sometimes get those opportunities to actually work for a nonprofit and get the ListSet experience. So definitely has a nice resume boost.
Yeah, those nonprofit projects are some of the coolest things that we do. It's really exceptional that we get to do that. Yeah, so let's go to Slack channels and talk a little bit about how to join them, just to make sure you know how to join them. So if you go into Slack, on the left side of the screen, you're going to see a big bar. On that bar is going to be a thing that says channels. Once you click channels, you can click manage. Once you click manage, it'll say browse channels. It will bring you to a search bar on the right-hand side of the screen. You can just type in hashtag or pound jobs, and it will come up with all of the job boards effectively that we have on Slack. Join as many of them as you like, and check back into them really often. We post a lot of stuff there. Sometimes things get overlooked. It is definitely worth you checking it super regularly. I would say every few days. If you're really applying pretty heavily every day, it's a really good place to make sure you're not missing anything. But join as many as you think are relevant to you. Again, if something's pinned, we have a great connection there, so please reach out. So yeah, that's kind of all the initial technical stuff out of the way, all the housekeeping stuff. So let's actually get into the workshop proper. Yeah, so first thing a lot of people ask are about like, okay, what kind of not technical skills do you need in a technical job where you're working remotely? Communication is listed first. It is probably the most important of all of the skills. It is ridiculously important to have as a remote worker. Honestly, if you have really exceptional communication, you are a head and shoulders above a lot of other people in the remote job market. So that you have that going for you pretty much immediately. There's a lot of examples of people getting hired on at tech companies in technical roles, mainly because of their soft skills, and then a little bit because of their technical skills, right? Soft skills are really hard to teach generally. And so it is really great if you can roll into a job with those soft skills already. Hard skills can kind of be taught. Soft skills are a lot harder to teach. Something that all technical jobs are going to need is problem solving. That's pretty much the job. If you're going to be writing a lot of code or doing data analytics, you are solving problems all the time. Managing your time well is ridiculously important too. We'll get a little bit into some of the pitfalls you can run into if you're not good at that later, but in general, if you can bring the abilities that you kind of have, that we have listed here, to the table, then you are in a really excellent place to be very successful. Some really good examples of careers that transition well into remote work, in my opinion, are like customer service and sales. If you used to work in education, that translates well. Healthcare translates really well. Any kind of sort of public facing job. So if you've been dealing a lot with customers in a restaurant setting, anything like that, that sort of thing works well because you're really good at communication. Yeah, with that, we'll sort of go to web presence and personal branding and how to frame yourself.
All right. So the big things that we're going to cover here are your GitHub and LinkedIn pages. The other social media sites are definitely important. Folks are going to Google you. Just think if you were trying to hire somebody, and most of us are going to get paid large salaries, so we're going to do some digging and find out more about the person. So they're going to do that as well. So they'll find your other social media posts. So go ahead and do a quick Google search of yourself, like an incognito mode, see what pops up. If that's drawing some red flags for you as to the person you would hire, you should probably go ahead and edit those, delete those things out, things like that. But moving on to the more fun stuff, the more professional tools that they're really going to dive into are our GitHubs and our LinkedIns. So with that, you want to show off a little bit of your personality. You want to be active there. It is a professional tool, but post your thoughts and opinions, things you're working on, things like that. You want to kind of show them who you are, and that builds into that like communication. You're showing your ability to troubleshoot because ideally you're posting different applications you're developing to solve little problems. So all that's just building up your profile. When they click on you, it's not just a sterile profile that's never posted, never liked anything, never done anything. So they'll be able to go through and kind of see who you are as a person. And that's important because, you know, your resume gets through the application tracking system, and before they talk to you, they want to know a little bit about you. So you want to make yourself as shiny as possible. All right, and then with that, we'll dive into our LinkedIn pages. So with the LinkedIn, it's really important to have a complete LinkedIn page. So go ahead and, you know, fill in your work history, any schools you might have went to, all the skills, all the things like that. So if we look through Christina's, we see all that. She's got a nice background image. She's got a photo of herself that's really nice. And the really cool thing about her profile is her project was about national parks. So everything kind of ties into that as like her capstone project. So she's really loves hiking and being outdoors. So everything there shows that in a nice professional way. And then it's got the highlights of her school. It's got a nice about me section that's professional, that tells you a little bit about her, what she's bringing to the table. And then you list your skills, and that's going to be, again, your transferable skills, all that good stuff. You can post links to your GitHub capstone, and they'll be able to see it there. Then you've got your work experience, your education, and down there at the bottom is her her project. And then whenever you go to her GitHub page, it's nice and stylized, fully filled out as well. And she's got links to her LinkedIn to get back there. So once you're in Christina land, you can stay in Christina land. You can go to her website, you can go back to her LinkedIn, you can just get everywhere nice and easy. And we are good there, David.
Yeah, so with that, where do you even find remote jobs? That can be kind of the hardest thing sometimes. And so top places are job boards. Honestly, job boards are really great places to find all kinds of interesting, cool places to work. These are just ones that I've gotten a lot of luck out of. Something I did forget to mention whenever we sort of started this presentation, you guys will get this slide deck as well as all of our notes. So you don't have to worry about like trying to find these websites or anything. There's a reason they're all links, right? We want you to just be able to click on them and stuff much easier. We'll also give you a whole bunch of more job boards here in a minute once we send everything out. And actually, Danny's already posted those in the chat. But anyway, job boards usually have an option to send you a newsletter of new jobs. So definitely sign up for that if you really like that newsletter and get a lot out of it. I will say one thing with it, that they're basically web scrapers, so sometimes they're a little bit outdated. Make sure to actually apply to a job on the company's website. Don't just apply on like we work remotely, right? If you do that, you can run into a pitfall of it being outdated, and you can come up with this really fantastic killer resume, and then the job's already closed, and that's really extremely annoying. So please apply on the actual company's website. Other good places are recruiting agencies. They effectively all have jobs that the recruiting agency has been hired to fill. So usually a whole bunch of jobs for a few select companies that they're hiring out of contract. One thing to watch there is make sure if you're really concerned about like if you're really concerned about like an in-office or like some kind of residency requirement, double check that. Sometimes the residency thing really matters. Sometimes it doesn't. So what I mean by that is sometimes it'll say you have to be in like Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio to apply for this job. Sometimes that totally doesn't matter. Sometimes it really does matter, and it's usually for tax reasons. If you're not sure if that matters or not, ask the recruiter and they can tell you. It is always worthwhile to set up a call with the recruiter. They probably will reach out to you if you apply to something via their website, but it's always worth reaching out to them anyway. They're good people to have in your back pocket. They will refer you to positions that they think you fit well for, so that sort of takes some of the work out for you. In general, if you're looking to find more of these, You can find them sponsoring local networking events and tech events. They do that quite often. And you can also just Google search for local ones. The ones listed here are just ones that we work with a whole lot. And so that's why they're listed here. Also, sorry about the link for that file. We'll get that fixed and get them sent to you. No worries. Must have moved something around or something. Who knows? But these companies, the reason these are listed is pretty much all of these hire 100% remotely, at least for their technical positions. If you want to find more of these companies, you can figure out where your mentors work and potentially even get a referral from one of your mentors. That's always worth doing. At networking events, you can figure out kind of where people work there. And also ask people in your just personal network, right? Like, I'm a big outdoors person. I do a lot of outside activities, and you'd be really surprised how many tech people are big outdoor enthusiasts. So you'd be really, really shocked where folks work in your everyday life, you know. The other places to look are just professional associations are really worth looking at, and same with industry Slacks. You can get added to them, like Bluegrass Developers Guild or the Louisville Tech Slack. Cincinnati Tech Slack is a good one too. We'll go into those a little bit later, but those are really great places to look. LinkedIn is also good, but again, make sure to actually apply on the company's website. Don't just apply via LinkedIn. Trying to think, there was one other point I had there, but oh yeah, and the last thing there, if you ever apply to something and you're like, I wonder if somebody at Code U has a connection there, reach out to us. You never know. We might. We have a lot of connections, a lot of places. You would be really surprised who we know. But yeah, once you've actually found a job, sort of how do you effectively apply for a job? A lot of people say, you know, research the company, but what do they actually mean whenever they say research the company? There's a few things. What tech do they use outside of the area you would be potentially working, right? Like, from the job description, you can probably figure out what tech you would be working in, but what about like in the, I don't know, data analytics sphere and not in just the web development sphere? What do they use for their backend? Do they use Kubernetes? Like, what, I don't know, find out more stuff about how the company operates at a wider angle. Adding that stuff to your resume can really help you get noticed. What do they look for in employees? What are the company's values and what are their long-term goals and objectives? Putting stuff like that in your resume can really help push it to sort of the next level. It's really, really quite helpful. Same deal with like recent happenings and news appearances, not negative news appearances, only positive ones. Don't mention if they made some kind of horrible error and like caused a massive outage. That's probably a bad idea. Don't do that. But if they did something really cool or had a really interesting product rollout or something like that, mention stuff like that. Companies love to hear about things like that, and it's always nice for them to hear like, hey, well, the stuff we're doing is being heard and listened to. That's awesome. So once you kind of find those things, update your resume and your cover letter to sort of reflect those things. Make sure to add them to those. Really helps you get a more effective application in. Apply, and then once you apply, connect to a bunch of people on LinkedIn if you possibly can. You can't always see who posted the jobs, so if you can't see who posted the jobs, that is okay. Figure out who would be probably working on that team, right? So if you're applying to a company that has a relatively small web development team, connect with some of the web developers in that company, right? Ask them questions about the job. Say, hey, I applied to this. I'm really interested in getting it. Can you give me more advice on how to do well in the interview? Or what do you do day to day? Or how does it look working at this company, right? What's the culture like? Stuff like that. No matter what, it's always worth reaching out, even if you aren't responded to. Sometimes that happens. Some people aren't very active on LinkedIn, but it is always worth asking. It is always worth reaching out to people. Last thing too, you can also reach out to me or Ali Rippey on Slack. We might have a connection. You never know. It's really surprising who we have connections to out there. We talk to a lot of people. And then sort of next thing, even deeper into the weeds of boosting your chances with actually putting in the application. So use an applicant tracking system friendly format. Effectively, like, use a bunch of keywords, as many as you possibly can. Tailor your resume to each application. I know that sounds like a horrible pain, but once you get sort of a really good general one, you can shift it just a little bit each time to better match that job and get a really good application in to a company. If you don't do that, the applicant tracker will just sort of throw away your resume. So definitely do that. Definitely spend a little bit of extra time to make sure it actually lands in front of a person. With that, just a little caveat, AI is being used a whole lot more there, and actually to decent effect. So instead of you having to use this really specific term, it'll sort of interpolate what you mean by saying something tangentially related. So that actually makes it a little easier on you as an applicant. But again, it really does matter that you tailor every time when applying to stuff. That is ridiculously important. Any kind of remote communication tool you used, list them. Even if you've only used them in your personal life, that is totally okay and fine. Shows that you're comfortable with communicating totally online. So if you're a huge Discord user, mention that, right? Talk about what you've used in Discord, right? And your familiarity there. Same with Slack, MS Teams. A lot of these communication tools are at least fairly similar. And so companies won't have to train you as hard if you have a little bit of knowledge and experience with them. Build your LinkedIn connections every chance that you get. Do not wait until you need your network to use your network. Always be building your network. Connect with as many people as you can. You've just met somebody really briefly at even an online event. You talk to them for 2 seconds, send a connection to them. It can't hurt.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that a little bit too.
Go ahead.
Much to like David said, even if you message them and they don't message back very often, if you make it past that interview process, they're going to talk to their team about the folks that they're thinking about bringing on. And, you know, your name's going to be at least on their mind. They've heard of you before because you messaged them. So that's definitely a bigger help. They'll be like, oh, yeah, David messaged me. He was nice. I never got back with him, but I'd rather take my chances with David than somebody else I don't know.
I at least know that David's not a bot. You know what I mean? It is really helpful. At least David's not a robot or AI or something. And so that really does make a huge difference, right? Same too with if you kind of met somebody, but you want to kind of keep talking to them and sort of foster the relationship a little bit, ask them questions about what you initially talked about, or ask them their advice on where you should sort of take your career, especially if they're a senior person. People appreciate being listened to in that capacity. Follow companies on LinkedIn whenever you apply to something. It actually makes your name come up first when the recruiter looks at the sort of list of applicants. That's a really super handy tip that a recruiter handed off to us. Really appreciated that. It really does work. Last piece of advice on the boosting your chances thing is practice interviewing. The only really good way to get good at interviewing is to interview. And it's not always the best place to practice an interview in a potential like, hey, I might get this job, I might not type situation. Can be a little rough. So really good resource for that is Candy Paul and Jenny Terry. They do mock interviews, so reach out to them and get something scheduled. They're really, really excellent, really help folks a whole lot. Whenever I was going through the program, I did them, and that made me a whole lot better at mock interviewing or at interviewing in general, but also at mock interviewing. It was really excellent. So please reach out to them. Yeah, sort of the next thing is recruiters and navigating that world. So if you come from not tech, you probably haven't worked with a whole lot of recruiters. You might have, but probably not. But they're super, super prevalent in tech. They're all over the place. In general, there's two types of recruiters. There's internal recruiters, which are pretty self-explanatory, basically just people who work for the company you're applying for. So if you're applying to Microsoft and a Microsoft recruiter reaches out to you, they work for Microsoft. That's in the story, pretty straightforward. An external recruiter are a little different. External recruiters are always agencies, right? So whenever I gave the list of recruiting agencies earlier, those are all external recruiters, right? They are people who have been hired to fill a whole bunch of roles or really, really high profile, high paying roles. They have a lot of positions they're working all the time. So you really should be upfront with them about wanting remote work. If that is a hard stop for you, tell them what you want. That is totally fine. If you can compromise, do that. They usually have a whole lot of different positions, a lot of which at least hybrid is an option. You can always sort of leverage that hybrid position to get into a fully remote job down the line. Keep in mind too, their job is to sort of fill a quota. They may not actually know what you really want, and really may not pay a whole lot of attention to that. So if something comes your way from a recruiter that's really not up your alley, not what you want to do, that's okay. But give them some feedback and let them know, hey, this doesn't really fit, and here's why. And they'll say, sure, okay. And they'll sort of change what they send to you. Make sure to do your own research on employers to make sure it's actually a place you want to work. And biggest thing is really show off as many of your skills in sort of that initial call, as well as on your resume as you can. When submitting it to a recruiter, they have a lot of positions that you might be a good fit for, and there may be something that you never even considered that you're a really, really solid fit for at a pretty interesting company doing cool things. So make sure to do that. So yeah, with that, we'll sort of transition into finding tech connections.
Yep, this was also one of the most important pieces. Like having those resumes good is super important, but having those connections is also direly important because that gets you a foot in the door. I know like folks that I know, we've recommended each other for jobs and got job interviews that way, just because I've interviewed and I was like, ooh, that's not a job for me, but my buddy David, that's right up his alley. And then they call David and they're like, hey, David, we heard you'd be a great fit. And that's actually happened before with a few places. So definitely embrace and build those connections. If you can locally, if not, there's all these great resources online. So like David mentioned a few times, there's those regional Slack channels. They are not limited to just Kentucky. They've got them all over the world and all over the US and things. Sometimes they're even more specific about like subgenres, like you see the Kentucky game developers on Discord. So like if you want to get into gaming, like that's a good one to join versus like Kentucky Discord for coding, really dive into the space that you want to get into. So you make those connections there, and ideally they're working the places that you want to be. Then search for other groups and things like Meetup and Eventbrite. Those are great. I always try to push for the in-person events because there's nothing that beats that good face-to-face connection. I know for a lot of us, it's kind of like you're nervous about it and everything. You're a little introverted, but we're all talking about the things that we love, the technology and the coding and doing all the cool stuff, your personal projects. Folks love to talk about that, and that's how you really make those connections. And then, you potentially get to help each other out because, maybe Kristen's working on something really cool that I don't know about. And I'm like, oh, I need to integrate that pipeline that she was talking about. So I can hit her up and be like, hey, what are the resources to do that? Do you have any good documentation or whatever? And, she's going to be like, yeah, here it is. Let me help you out. And, then we build that relationship. Leveraging those contacts you already know. So like David said, I am a avid outdoor person as well. I rock climb. I was surprised to learn how many people work in the tech industry that rock climb. That's, and our relationships have only gotten better because we both rock climb and then we work in the tech industry and we're always talking about different nerdy tech stacks and things like that, and then climbing and whatnot. So definitely, that builds your relationship, gets your circle bigger. They introduce you to folks. And then, when they have jobs and things like that, you're usually at the top of the mind then because you're good friends and they know that you'll be good to work with. We'll get into the interviewing style. So once the application works out, your connections work out, and you get those actual interviews, usually this is like the second step. You get your general interview, and then you get a technical interview. And they kind of vary. Some of the different topics or ways that they do this, there's timed assessments. So sometimes they're going to be like through the observed coding, or there'll be like a take-home test. On those, it'll just be a real scripted out prompt or an assignment. So it might be like a ticket that they would kind of do, and it'll be like a mock thing, like, here's a set of data, do X, Y, Z with it, put it in a table on a website or whatever. It'll be a very clear objective to do. So sometimes the take home, they'll be like, all right, it's Tuesday, have it turned in before Tuesday next week. Or, if it's a smaller thing, it might be like, hey, we're going to jump on a Zoom call and watch you code this out, walk us through the process. And that'll just be them wanting to see how you're thinking. And that's all this is. They want to see how you take that problem, how you solve it. Because you've done a little bit of coding now, so there's 40 or 50 probably different ways to attack every situation. So they want to see how you go about it and how your mind thinks, and just how you go about it and how you self-start, maybe resources you use and all that good stuff. Sometimes you get a bigger take-home assessment that might be like, do this project. It'll be very similar. They're going to give you a time frame and have you do that. And then the Q&A, that's usually more when you're like advanced in the field. You're no longer like a junior developer, you're more seasoned. It'll be more conversation based. It'd be like, well, how did you implement, the MySQL database at your old work or whatever? And you're like, oh yeah, I launched it through Kubernetes using Docker, yada, yada, yada. We did this, we implemented rate limits and this and that and all that good stuff. So it'll be a nice conversation flow, and they're just wanting to see where all your skills lie. And it's a lot more easier to do it that way because they can't have you stand up all that stuff in a weekend or something. It's too big of a project, but they'll get to know you and talk about all that good stuff. And then after that, they always get to that point where what questions you have. This is definitely one of the most important parts of the interview. As somebody who's done hundreds of interviews, when somebody doesn't have a question at the end, it's a red flag. It doesn't feel like they're as interested in the company or that they're interested in us or me. So having those questions shows that you are super interested and that you want to know things about the company. So just great questions are like, what does onboarding look like? Like what's the process that I'm going to go through when I start at the company? And that's not a bad thing. That just gives you a great idea of how that company is going to flow. Maybe they're like, oh, we don't have an onboarding process. We're small. We just throw you in. And some folks, they're not going to be okay with that. Some people like structure. David loves structure. He would be very upset. I love chaos. So I'd be like, yes, let's jump in the fire. Let's go. If it's a remote position, asking about the potential of having to return to the office, or if they see that coming. A lot of folks are doing that. So your bigger companies like Humana and stuff, sometimes departments have to go back. So that's a good thing to know. They usually have a good runway of knowing that. It's not like they get a call tomorrow and they're like, all right, everybody's in next week. Usually they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be 6 months and we're going to be back in the office. So that's definitely good. How do teams communicate with one another? That's another good one. That's going to get you some more insight into the tech stacks that they're using. So they might do everything through Slack. Maybe teams only talk through Slack, and then the rest of the company only communicates through like Jira tickets or something like that. So you might be like, oh, we're highly like shut off from the rest of the company. We won't really ever talk to anybody other than my team. That's awesome. Or you might be like, well, that kind of stinks. I don't like that. I want to network and talk to other folks too. Another big one is the how do they define success in the first 6 months? And with that, that's a good time to bring up like the mentors and things like that. So where do they expect you to be in 6 months? What do they see progress being? I like to always go out farther than that. Like what does 6 months look like? What does a year look like? Then what's the next step? So like if you're a junior, when do I get to drop the junior title and just be a web developer? And then when's the next title change from web developer to senior web developer? Things like that. So that lets you know if the organization is well structured or if it's just kind of like willy-nilly. Because usually it's time frames, or on the chance that you're like an awesome coder, it's like, oh yeah, it's performance based. These are usually the timelines, but you can succeed faster if you do better. And then the other good one is the opportunities for continued learning. So do they pay for education? Do they provide you with like a Pluralsight subscription, like an O'Reilly subscription, things like that. So you can do all that additional learning. Good stuff to know. And then that shows them that you're interested in continuing your knowledge base versus like, I just want to get here and coast. All right. And then we land the job. So what do we need to work remotely? So the big obvious ones are a solid internet connection. You're going to want a good internet connection because you're going to have to do the video calls. With companies, most of the time your camera is going to have to be on. Sometimes they let you get away with not having it, but you need a faster internet connection for that. So some of the folks that are a little far out, that makes it harder, but that's something to take into consideration and look at the other options that you have there. A lot of companies will help you with things like that. So say you don't have good internet and like Starlink's really great in your area and it's just like something you can't afford. They'll be like, oh yeah, we can definitely cover that. That's part of hiring you. We'll cover the bill for that and we'll get you in. So there's that. Then having a good computer that can handle multiple tasks. Again, depending on the company. If it's like a small company, you might have to have your own computer. That's very rare, but a lot of times they're going to provide you with a computer. But in the event that they don't, you got to have a faster computer that can handle the coding that you're going to be doing. In a lot of cases like that too, they'll give you like an allowance and things like that to get a nice computer. But on top of that, your workspace is going to be important. This is one thing I didn't realize is working for big companies, they actually put a lot of thought into that and like figuring out what chairs go with the right desks and to keep the elbow height right and your wrists. And, turns out the carpet tunnel's real. It's a real thing. I always read about it, laughed about it, was like, that's fake. And then here recently I had to buy my ergonomic $100 keyboard that's got the wave and the padding built in and the ergonomic mouse. So, that was a surprise expense. So just keep those things in mind. And then a dedicated workspace. Sounds silly, but when you work from home, wherever you're working becomes the office. So if you are purely working from your couch, whenever work's done, your living room all of a sudden feels like work and you don't want to be there anymore. So you definitely want to have your own little workspace. I've got a spare bedroom that I converted into an office. So that's where the computers are. When I'm done, I don't come back in that room. That's work. It's no longer the fun place to play games and whatnot. So we just do that in the living room now. So definitely important to have your own dedicated workspace.
Yeah, and so kind of along with that, like talking about employer expectations, what are you actually expected to do, and sort of what's the culture like working remotely? You have to self-advocate a lot harder as a remote employee versus a in-person or a hybrid employee. You got to really tell others what you need because they don't really see you in person, so they may miss some like really subtle cues, I guess, that you don't understand something or that you're uncomfortable with something. So learn how to speak up and sort of who to talk to about any problems you're running into. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification if something's confusing. That is totally fine, and that's part of it. That's all right. And same thing if you absolutely can't resolve like a certain technical problem or you're encountering some kind of barrier to your work. Definitely tell people that really early on. Keeping people in the loop is really important. If your supervisors and your team members don't have to wonder what you're doing, that is a really positive thing, and really helps them have confidence in you as an employee. People appreciate updates as you complete things, even if they're relatively small. Finish things on time. If you committed to a certain timeline, really try to meet that. If you can't meet that, let people know ahead of time. It happens to the best of us, but development is kind of an assembly line system. So if you can't get your thing done, that might stop or hold up somebody else down the line from doing what they need to do. So communication is really important there. Same thing with nobody likes to be sort of left hanging. People shouldn't have to wonder whether you're actually going to do the thing you said you're going to do. If that's the case, then that can cause you some pretty serious troubles. If you're always on time, always there, always doing what you said you're going to do, people have a lot more trust in you. It lines you up for promotions, and it also lines you up for a lot cooler, more interesting projects down the line that can lead to some pretty interesting experiences. Be on time for meetings, and pay attention. Just because they're virtual doesn't make them any less important. Actually, that makes them way more important, because it's some of the few times you actually see your fellow team members. Have your camera on, unmute, speak up when you can or when it's appropriate. If you're unreachable during work hours, that is a problem. That can really cause some questions as to what you're doing. Even if you have a really flexible schedule, that's cool, but you should have some level of consistency, or at least communicate with people whenever you're going to be away and things. Nice thing about Slack and MS Teams, they all have the little status symbol thing, so you can always put a little away sign if you're away, and sort of say until when. That's very helpful for people to not be confused. And so with that, we'll kind of get into the realities of remote work. Danny, you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, I'd like to tag on to the other thing just real quick. That stuff does sound very like logical and common sensey, but it is very much more important when you're working remote, because the limited interactions are real. Like you don't see your teamwork. There's no like, oh, I went to the bathroom and ran into David along the way. It's purely you at home. So
yeah, you have to make like a concerted effort to see somebody. So yeah.
So with that, this isn't necessarily for everybody. Not everybody loves working remotely in that regard, because it can be lonely. You're going to be at home by yourself. I know my dog probably is tired of me talking to him, because I bounce ideas off of him all the time. He just looks at me a little sideways like, what is that? So, but yeah, you're at home working alone. So that's definitely could be a drawback if you're a social person, you like those interactions. That digital communication is super important. That's a lot of the times the only way you really get to deal with your team. And very often this is going to include a lot more meetings than you might have in person, where like David and I have like a weekly call. Sometimes we just jump on calls together throughout the week, where it would be much more than if we were in person, because I could quickly be like, hey, David, what do you think about this? He'd be like, oh, that's silly. Don't do that. But sometimes we got to set up a whole call and like figure out some things and talk through things, do the rubber ducking and like, hey, I've got this idea. You think that'd be good? And he's like, yeah, that absolutely. Let's expand it this way. And I'm like, oh, didn't think about that. So that's definitely important. And then it's super easy to get distracted. You are at home, so you're like, ooh, I can just do the laundry real quick. Let me change out the dishwasher. Let me throw some dishes in there. Let me put them up. Let me fold the clothes. And then 3 hours later, you're like, all the house chores are done. Oops, I haven't done anything at work today.
I will say with that, it really helps to have like a calendar or something bug you, like have tasks set up in like a Google Calendar or something to poke you whenever you're not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, because like mine's orange. So it's very intimidating if I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of stuff I haven't done. I should probably start chewing through that, or I'm going to be murdered by management. And so, it's one of those things. You really have to keep yourself accountable in whatever way that way that works best for you. Same thing if you're not really good, if you're bad at like checking messages or like leaving people on red, stuff like that. Yeah, probably not great. You should probably change that behavior a little bit, or maybe not for you. Yeah, and the other thing to sort of tag along with what Danny was saying, is work sort of takes the amount of time you give it, right? Work will always be there. And it's super easy to work way past when you're supposed to quit. That is really, really easy to do. Yeah, that's just a really common problem, actually. So using your calendar to sort of keep track of the time and keep track of what you're doing is really helpful. And so to sort of having that set work hours, even if you're a little flexible, just to have in your head, oh, I'm supposed to be off at 5. Why am I still here at 6:30? That kind of a thing. That is really, really helpful for me anyway. It really, really is.
So definitely super important. It's ties into what I'll start with on the tips and tricks on the next one. So that last point, using a calendar, can't stress that enough of how important that is. I'm not the most organized. I like to have that chaos, like I mentioned earlier, but I do find I have to have those things go off like that. Especially like with the work David and I do, working with the nonprofits. I get super passionate about that stuff. So there have been times where I'm just plugging away and then I'm like, oh, it is 9:30 at night. Okay. I was supposed to be done at 5. Oops. But we've got flexible work hours, so it's fine. It just, sucks that I was locked in and worked till 9:30 and, missed lunch and dinner and this or that. But yeah, so definitely doing that. Communicate with your team a lot and your managers. Let them know what you're working on, things like that. Again, just reiterating what we went over, because that is your advocacy. You're not in the same building. They don't get to see you doing a ton of stuff. Sometimes as a developer, you might get a small issue and it might take you weeks to figure out, and the solution might be 10 lines of code. It's not that you didn't work hard. It's you had to do a lot of research. You had to do a lot of reading through the documentation and stuff to figure that out. So you definitely need to communicate those things, because maybe your manager isn't very technical and they're like, oh, well, David spent 2 weeks writing 10 lines of code. Obviously, he wasn't very productive. And turns out the 10 lines are like the most important core logic of the application. So we're super important, took a lot of work. So communicating a lot. Again, working in your workspace. Not only is it good for your health, having the nice chair and all that good stuff, but then it gives you a real separation of work and home, because you do lose that being at home. Great things if you can close your door, if you have a door to the room. I know, like, when the girlfriend's over, sometimes like she'll leave later and I'll be in a meeting, so like I have to close the door because she's getting ready. And if not, then like you hear the hair dryer or this and that, and I'm distracted, and then she sees me just typing, so it looks like I'm not really working. And she's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? What are you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, too busy. I'm working." So that's always great. And then just building in that routine, that's so important. Again, that next point, different time zones. So folks might be in other time zones. So being in a routine, maybe Walter is 3 hours ahead of us, so I only get to talk to him between 4 and 6 our time. So I really need to, if I need to talk to Walter, I got to have that in my calendar to like, boop, like, oh, Walter's on, let me send him a message. And cool, what'd you work on? How does this affect you? Great. Awesome, we're good, check. Awesome. That way we don't have to wait till the next day, or, Walter's off for the next week. And I'm like, oh man, like I should have asked him that and he's unreachable. So definitely got to account to things like that. And then just building those routines really help. You wake up, you get dressed, you get coffee, whatever, like same as anything. It's like going to work. You build that routine, gets you in a flow, makes the day not seem like it just stretches on forever, and gives it like those meaningful transitions and things like that. All right, and then we'll jump into the good old imposter syndrome. That is definitely real. We're all going to feel that. So there is a ton of information online about imposter syndrome. You will find everybody from established like PhDs to brand new people in the industry and everywhere in between. Everybody feels that. I know one of my students, when I was mentoring, she has a master's and has run study programs and does crazy machine learning and all kinds of cool stuff. And she does it not in Python and stuff. So it was like, this was new to her, but she was like, I'm so afraid to get in the industry, and started talking to her. I was like, oh, you do the job already. Like, you write the models and then somebody does it. Now you can do it yourself. And, she was like, oh, I didn't realize that and stuff. So like, even, professionals that have been in the industry for 20 years feel that about their job. So if you wait till you're comfortable, you might not ever take the leap to start applying for those jobs and things. So definitely just start doing it. If you don't feel like you're fully ready, that's fine. I know those skills that they want seem really daunting. You're like, oh, they want me to learn 50 languages and this and that. That's just the ideal candidate. Like, ideally, you could have all that, or maybe they just want you to have a couple of those. So, don't assume what they want. Let them tell you they don't want you in that regard. So apply to those. Everybody's got that unique background. So, maybe my background that I was in before this, like being in charge of IT and things like that, maybe I'm working for a company that is wanting to develop like a ticketing system for IT professionals, then I'm a super important person because I've ran IT departments for 20 years versus David, who didn't run an IT department. He might be a better coder, but I know the industry and the field and what's important. So that would make me a more desirable candidate. So you might be underskilled, but what you bring to the table is much more important. Things that are important like that, like seeing a lot of nurses get really good jobs because of that, because they go on to work for the applications that nurses use and stuff like that. So having those degrees and background really aids in that and lets them know how to make it better. And then definitely while doing all this, don't let that stop you from upping your skills and keeping learning, because if you don't keep growing, then you'll feel even more less and less qualified for the job. So keep learning, plugging away, and then you'll be in a job before you know it.
Yeah, so just a quick note sort of on Code U successes. So we've had more than 1,300 people officially tell us that they've gotten a promotion or gotten a new job in tech. There are tons more, undoubtedly, but they just haven't told us for whatever reason. That being said, please let us know if you get a job in tech or even something kind of tangentially related to tech. We even want to hear about it no matter what. Really keeps up the morale. It's really great to hear. We're genuinely invested in you getting jobs. It's very important to us. But yeah, please let us know as you get new roles. Even if you think it's not like super techie, you never know. It may be more techie than you think it is. Sort of next steps and priorities for you. Make sure to practice presenting projects in preps for a capstone interview toward the end of the course. That is important. Plus, it'll really help with your interviewing process. That is very important. Make sure that your resume actually reflects all the skills you've been picking up in the courses. Sometimes people don't do that, so please make sure to do that. Meet with somebody from the careers team to establish a career plan, and definitely apply to one job, but a lot more than that. The more jobs you apply to, the more success you're going to actually get out of that job search. It is really important that you do that, and then really try and keep up that learning momentum and show some activity on GitHub. That is important to employers. It may take a minute, but eventually you will get hired. The job market can be a little tough at the moment. Just means you have to put in more applications and be more smart about where you apply, and really leverage your network. Networking is a ridiculously good way to get a job in technology. Again, once you get that great job, let us know, please. It is very important to us. So just some follow-ups on our end. We'll send you the Code U student resources folder link along with this recording. Once we get the job board list sorted out, we'll send that to you also, as well as the Discords and all that stuff. Make sure to add yourselves to any of the jobs channels in Slack that are important to you. That is really important. Keep a close eye out for the Tech Careers newsletter. If you already get it, make sure to apply to stuff via it. If you don't get it yet, you will once you graduate. Demo day is in a couple days. So if you want to actually attend, space is limited, but you can register on that link to attend once we send you the recording in the next day. But really, please attend. We love to see folks come by and sort of support our grads and people presenting. It's really wonderful. Here's sort of a last reminder of all the people on the careers team and our emails. Best way to get us is probably going to be Slack. We're there mostly. But yeah, any questions or anything like that, we can go ahead and start answering.
Yeah, definitely let us know when you get hired. We love to hear it. We
Yes.
often celebrate with you behind the scenes. We're usually super stoked. We're like, yes, we worked with them so much, and like,
yeah, it's great.
Did this and that, and so share that success
Really
so we can celebrate with you. Yep, go ahead.
I heard everything you were saying, David, about everything, but like some of it kind of blurred together for me. So I just wanted to get a clarification on.
Sure.
I seen that the demo day was on Wednesday, and I went to sign up for it, but I realized just a few minutes ago actually that the cutoff time was supposedly earlier today, and I just seen the little post. So, but you were saying that we could still potentially get in.
Noted. I might not have seen that, so that may be an error on my part.
Okay, it was
I can
literally
find out more.
Okay, it was literally like the last line of the like the little thing. It was still sitting open on my screen. I was reading. I was like, oh wait, crap! Like there was a cutoff. It said like noon today, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shoot, I'd like to attend that.
Yeah, I was going to say I may have missed that. We might still be able to get you in, but I can find out more about that. I'm not the one who shuts it off, so that may have been an error on my part.
No worries. I just
still okay.
asked about that.
It's noon tomorrow. You can just fill it out.
Oh, is it noon tomorrow? Okay, cool.
Yep.
I don't know. I have my days mixed up. Thank you.
Honestly, I feel like it's Tuesday too. You're good. No worries. It's weird. I don't know why I feel like that.
Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yes, I was wondering, is there a difference between just working as working for gigs as opposed to working for a company full time?
Like doing freelance work?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working somewhere full time, you're there full time, ideally 40 hours a week and long term. Whereas if you're freelancing, there's different things. There might be contracts. So, David might hire me for 3 months to do as much work in that time, or maybe it's just, I need this database built. The contract's only for a month. If you finish early, you get the full money, whatever. So there's a bunch of different varieties of how that works.
And with that, something just to add, sometimes you don't get some of the benefits that you get with a traditional job. So you may not get like medical insurance or like a retirement plan or something. So you sort of have to figure that out with your salary ask and things. Some people, some devs sort of freelance forever and contract forever. I know someone who's been doing that for a decade plus, but others just do it here and there, and others have never even touched that area and just stay sort of full-time employed when they can. But yeah, those are the main differences.
Okay, but what I mean is there any specific things we need to be aware of when if we go this route as opposed to the regular route? Like, is there a different set of websites? Is there
there are a few listed on that sort of expanded job boards list. In general, a lot of the sort of job boards, they'll have freelance and contract positions listed also, just amongst sort of the full-time and part-time jobs too. So you'll see them kind of mixed in with the rest of things, but there are a few specific ones that are listed there once I send that out to you.
Yeah, I will note a lot of the freelance work is going to be a higher skill level. Just typically like the low-hanging fruit, they're going to have like newer interns and stuff do that. So like the stuff that they're going to freelance out will be the hard tests that maybe they don't have a person in-house to solve, or, they're just don't have enough of those folks to do that. So they would branch out to have like those hard problems really solved.
Yeah, or more specialized knowledge, right? Like if you know PHP and nobody around knows that, well, they may hire you as a contractor to sort something out for them.
Yep.
Any other questions or?
Yeah, we had one about capstone projects for ideas, and that's for the data set. I'd suggest you do something that you're interested in. If you have a passion for something, find some data with that. And then, like Chris had mentioned, talk to your mentors. They'll potentially find you some data sets or help you find them and kind of walk you in directions of where you go with that. So that's what the mentors really love to do. They like it whenever it's project time and you ask them all the nice questions and they get to help you figure out that stuff.
Yeah, go ahead. You are still muted.
Sorry, thought I hit the button. I was curious if you guys had any. Obviously, you've given us plenty of resources here. In regards to like time and management, like, do you guys have any tools that you utilize for, like, you know, I said you can Google Calendar. I'm a big Google Calendar user because I'm like, today I got the reminder for this. I was like, oh yeah, go get on the computer, sit down in front of this, because I was off in the house doing something else. I didn't know if you guys have any tools or other things you might recommend for somebody to utilize for just kind of like, that's, you know, like the Google Calendar is cool, but like, do you have other little things that maybe pop up, help you, or little other apps, websites, or some resources that you use for managing yourself on projects? Or
for me, for like longer term projects and stuff like that, I like Monday.com a ton. It is very good. It is very, very free for anything that you will ever use it for, and that I will ever use it for. I've never paid for it. It's really excellent. Obsidian is also very good. Obsidian is really exceptional. Really like it. Yeah, those are honestly my two really big ones. Trello is also really good, but it's sort of like the diet version of like a Monday.com, I guess. Obsidian is probably a whole lot better, and so is Monday.
okay, Obsidian, Monday, and Trello. Okay.
Trello. I like Trello, but it's for sort of lighter stuff, I guess.
Okay. Cool. Good to know. Thank you,
I
guys.
use GitHub projects if I'm doing coding projects, and that's basically just a Trello board. They have a
I
different,
forgot that
couple
one.
different views.
That one's excellent. That's really excellent stuff. That thing's great.
GitHub projects.
Yeah. So
Cool.
there, it's built into that, and you can attach projects to your repos and basically put in tickets and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you can also assign issues to like users and contributors. It's great.
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
That
so
sounds neat.
that's my main resource. And then I'm a pen and paper guy. I need to write it down to make it real. So I write stuff down. And
It helps me to put it in my brain sometimes if I jot it down, like it records a little better. It seems like if there's a physical interaction.
yeah, that's what I start out my day, and I write down like the day's activities that I need to do and try to assign times to them or like an order of importance, and then start to tackle it.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other sort of last minute questions? We only have a couple minutes left. We can probably answer one more. Anything else? Pretty good. Cool. If you have any other questions, DM us on Slack. We're around. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Hope it was helpful. We'll send some resources on once everything, the recording is finished and everything. So again, really appreciate y'all.
Thank you, everybody.